Hello, everybody, and welcome into another broadcast and another podcast of New England Sports Weekly. I am your host, as always, Sean Metcalf, and I'm glad that you've joined me this evening on another beautiful summer evening here as it's still in the 80s. It's warm. Probably buy another air conditioner for up here. Joys of being a homeowner. Gotta buy new things all the time and always got to try to find things. It's quite warm up in here, so we'll sweat it out this evening up here and try to be a little try to find some comfort up in here. It's gonna be warm, but nonetheless, I'm not doing as bad as the Boston Red Sox are. As they just have hit the skids. It's awful. It's maddening. It's disturbing, pisses you off, everything. I don't know. Throw whatever you want out there, whatever adjective that describes how you feel in a negative term, and it probably fits for the Red Sox right now. They're just have shit the bed. That's pretty much what they've done against anybody that's over 500 in MLB. Cool, you crushed the Baltimore Orioles, but they're a AAA team. But that's how things have really gone for the Red Sox as we look at the start of this show and as we go into mid-August, as today, not the timestamp the show, but it is August 18th. And the Red Sox have just absolutely puked all over themselves right now. Not fun. Not fun at all. With that out of the way, with that beautiful image in your head, I don't know what time of day you're sitting down. If you are watching a live stream, if you just had dinner, I apologize. Or if you're listening to this on a later date, having breakfast or lunch, I apologize as well for that image. But hey, it's reality. This team is not doing well right now. Not at all. So hopefully you kept your dinner down better than the Red Sox did. Really no good transition after that one, but hey, it's reality. Like I said, we'll get to the out of the box segment here. As we just mentioned, the Red Sox have just not played good baseball at all as they dropped the doubleheader against the New York Yankees yesterday, which would have been Tuesday, August 17th. The first game was just horrible. They had a 3-2 lead. They had a chance to buckle down and at least preserve that lead in the fifth inning, because remember, it's only 7 innings, at least for this year. They still kept with that whole short COVID season rule and kept the 7-inning doubleheaders. So in this instance, you were what would it be equal to the 7th inning that you were in when you were in the 5th. You brought in Garrett Whitlock, your best reliever. He came in and, like I said, threw up all over himself. A guy who normally is arguably your best reliever in that bullpen. We've talked about it all year long. Can go back to podcast number 1, but just the surprising pickup of Garrett Whitlock and how well he's been. He was even probably garnering not a lot, but probably a few All-Star votes. That's just how well he's been, and he'll probably be right in the thick of that American League Rookie of the Year race. But he came in, gave up 2 walks, then you bring in Josh Taylor. He gave up a walk. They gave up 3 runs that inning. Yankees got up to 5-3. The Red Sox ended up loading the bases in the top of the 7th inning. Excuse me, wow. I'm pulling a Sean McDonough there. And there goes Tyreek Hill, and it cracks up at the end before he gets sent to the end zone. So that was my Sean McDonough voice for the night. So hopefully I don't have any more of those. But the point being is that they had the bases loaded, no outs. Kike Hernandez had a golden opportunity even after they got 1 out with Travis Shaw with a 3-0 count to at least get a walk, drive in a run, make it 5-4, keep the line moving, and potentially get to your big boys and see what they can do. He strikes out, you're down to 0-2, and then the Rest is history. The Red Sox just couldn't pull it out in game one, and then game two was just a complete disaster. Not that they got blown away in that game, but you lose 2-0 in a doubleheader that you, at worst, you had to split. You had to split that to at least keep the Yankees behind you in the wild card race. And then you have to win this series. At least that's what you had to do. Now you blew that opportunity. And as we speak right now, oh my God. Well, you're getting some live play-by-play. And the Red Sox are just continuing to puke all over themselves. It's 4-1 as we get into the second inning. Against the pitcher, the Red Sox should just be completely pummeling in Andrew Heaney, who, as we talk about the theme of the night, throwing up all over yourself. That's what he did against the Chicago White Sox. And he can't get a goddamn more than one run off of him. I know we're only in the second inning, but holy hell, this is driving me insane. Oh my God, this is live therapy if you're listening with me right now, because this is just goddamn awful. This is just pathetic to watch. You needed Pivetta to come in and throw a good game. And I know that just ticked off of Bobby Dahlbeck's glove right there, but Jesus Christ, you needed somebody to come in here, buckle down, and give your offense an opportunity to at least score a decent amount of runs off of Andrew Heaney. And you can't do that. You can't even do that. I know we're only in the second inning, and I know this game is a 9-inning game, so you got a while to go, but holy hell. The way this series has gone, the way this last 3 weeks have gone, my God, this is getting frustrating. And we're only at the beginning of the show. We haven't even gotten into the meat of the show with the rest of the Red Sox. So, wow, just buckle up, boys and girls. This is going to be a bumpy ride. Oh, God, this is pathetic. And speaking of pathetic, the Red Sox are now even technically they're third in the division and third in the wild card race because of percentage points and the way this effing game is going. They're going to be third in the wild card race if they can't pull their heads out of their asses and win this goddamn game. But basically right now they are percentage points, they're 5. The Yankees are at 5.67 in their winning percentage, and the Red Sox are at 5.66 at their winning percentage. So based on that, the Yankees get the second wild card spot at the moment, but there would be a tiebreaker. They would have to play a tiebreaker game. I know we still have 40 or 39 odd games left, so still a while to go, but man, this is frustrating. And the Red Sox are just clinging on to some semblance of a playoff spot, trying to get back into that position from a team that was pretty much all the prognosticators, well, not the prognosticators, but all those odds makers out there probably about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, said they had about a 95% chance of making the playoffs. And hell, I think they had like a 70% chance of winning the division or 60% chance winning the division. You can probably flush all that down the toilet right now as far as the division's gone. And right now, the wild card looks like they're about to shit that one away. Oh, boy. Yeah, this is bad. Bad. I can't get over how bad things have gone right now with the Red Sox. Well, in other news, as we continue with the out of the box segment, Marcus Smart signs a 4-year, $77 million deal. Was he worth giving that much money? Was it a good contract for the Celtics to dole out? What really is the long-term play here? We'll get into that later on in the show. But it's an interesting signing to say the least, not because you don't know who Marcus Smart is, but the interesting thing is you know who he is. So that's really the kicker right there. You have somebody that's been in-house and you know what he is, and you gave him not a super max deal, nothing like that, but as far as what he slotted for, he gets his max. And then maybe on some better news here, maybe we'll try to make you feel a little bit better, at least in the out-of-the-box segment. Mac Jones made his preseason debut against Washington football team, and he looked okay. He looked good. He looked like an actual NFL starter, unlike the incumbent starter, with air quotes, in Cam Newton. But I liked what I saw. Yes, he didn't get a hell of a lot of time with the first team, but still, those second team guys, they're no jamokes. Those third team guys are pretty third and fourth stringers are the guys that might have maybe a couple more weeks left in the NFL. I'm not saying all of them, but you know what I mean. Once you get into those third string or late into that first game, you're facing guys that are going to bag groceries. But those first and second stringers, those are the legitimate NFL players. Obviously, second stringers, those aren't going to be ones that you're going to rely on, that you want to really get you through an NFL season. But it's not too bad. But Mac Jones did a pretty good job, and I liked what I saw. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here going down the stretch with the New England Patriots and Mac Jones. But that's our out of the and before we are done with the out of the box segment, it is time to say goodbye to Jackie McMullen, but not in the sad way, but more of the saying goodbye and hoping her best wishes, because she is retiring after a long career in the media in the Boston market, as she covered the Celtics. God, I'm 30 years old. I went to school for sports journalism, and even Jackie Mack had been a long time when I went to school for sports journalism. So you know how long she's been there. So I would say probably about a 40-plus year career. She's been all over the map. She's worked locally here in Boston, writing for the papers, and then got a job with ESPN on the national stage. But she is a class act. I would say that there's probably no better basketball reporter that's out there. Yeah, and I might be biased. And I know you can, and her colleague for a long time with the Globe, in Bob Ryan, you could throw right in that conversation as well. But Jackie Mack she's probably a better person than she is a basketball writer, and she is a Hall of Fame basketball writer. Literally, she is. She's in the Basketball Hall of Fame, won the Kirk Dowdy Award. So, I mean, you can't say anything but good words about Jackie Mack, and she's somebody that all aspiring sports journalists, and hell, even journalists altogether, should look up to. She's hell of a person, one of the best basketball writers I've ever seen. Always enjoyed writing her, reading her things that would always come out, no matter if it was Celtics related or not. She's the gold standard. I'll put it that way. So we will give Jackie Mack a farewell as she heads into retirement, and nothing but best wishes for Jackie Mack. So that's pretty much your feel good there between Mac Jones and Jackie McMullen. But we have to shift our attention back to the mess that is the Boston Red Sox. The Boston Red Sox, as I mentioned right off the top of the show, as I was guns a-blazing about 2 seconds into the show, just watching the game live just kind of gets my blood boiling lately, just how bad they are. Down 4-1 already in a series that you had to have, and you already screwed that up. You're already down 4-1. You lost the first 2 games. You desperately need to get back into this game and take this game, win this game, to get back into that second wild card spot. But, man, they just have been on the struggle bus big time. And I know we can look back towards that trade deadline. We can sit here until the cows come home and debate whether or not Hein Bloom did enough at the trade deadline to get them back And if these guys are still moping, if you are, you got to pull your head out of your ass because you're a major league player. This is your profession. Yeah, the upper management might have failed you. Well, they did fail you. They didn't get the proper pieces. Yeah, you got Kyle Schwarber, but you didn't get an actual legitimate first baseman. You didn't get any rotation help. And at this point, the way the bullpen's going, yeah, oh my God, you got Hansel Robles and Austin Davis. Those guys suck. They were trash. Hansel Robles was a trash closer for a bad Twins team. Yeah, I know at the beginning of the year, everybody thought the Twins were going to be in competition for the Central. Guess what? They're horrible this year. They're bad. They sold off pieces. And yeah, he might have been a closer, but not every closer is made equal. He is bad. He couldn't find the strike zone if you gave him a GPS and you spotted him the strike zone and you put it 2 inches in front of his face. He might throw 98, 99, but Wild Thing from Major League, from the movie Major League, Hansel Robles makes Wild Thing from Major League look like Greg Maddux with pinpoint control, for Christ's sake. And then Austin Davis has just been blah. That's pretty much it. Just nothing. Vanilla ice cream. Whatever bland thing you want to put out there. Milk and toast. He's nothing special. Not great. You put him in blowouts. That's all he does. You didn't get shit at the trade deadline. It sucks. But if you're a player, if you're Bogarts, Devers, Martinez, Evaldi, Sale, not really Sale, he just came back. We'll touch on that here in a second. But if you're the players that have been there pretty much all year, you can't feel bad for yourself anymore. It's pretty much 3 weeks past the trade deadline. You can't keep whining over this. And not that you hear a lot about it, but just the way that they carry themselves on the field and just the way that games have imploded here, it's just so obvious that something is missing. Something's wrong with this team. Because at one point, like I said earlier in the show, a lot of those places like Fangraphs and other statistical places had this team 94% chance of making the playoffs. Now, obviously, division, wild card, and such. There's all kinds of levels of the playoffs, but a 94% chance of making the playoffs. And this team just has absolutely spit the bit. They played awful. Last time that we talked last week, they were 2-10. 2-10 after the trade deadline. Things really haven't got much better. I'll tell you that much. And you can say they sweep the Baltimore Orioles, but yeah, that's a AAA team. Really, the only major league players that they have are Trey Mancini and Cedric Mullins. And then you can probably throw in Hayes as well. Austin Hayes. Decent player. But other than that, it's AAA roster. Half of those guys that came up for Baltimore, it reminds me of what the Red Sox were doing last year with their god-awful pitching staff with guys like Nick Godfrey and Springs. Just guys that were plucked out of AA and AAA for all these so minor league systems that got cut. It's just been awful, god awful. And yeah, so you're playing against Baltimore, you sweep Baltimore, you score a ton of runs in that series, you have that 16-2 blowout. Everybody's feeling great about themselves. But guess what? Those are the teams that you have to do that to. Those are the teams that you can't afford to drop a series to. And those are the teams that, quite frankly, that at this point in the season, you have to push for a sweep the way that your season's going right at this point. Now, obviously, that's a tall task. But at this point, you have to take 2 out of 3. If you're in a 4-game series, you have to take 3 out of 4. You can't putt around anymore. You can't just win 1 out of 2, split a 4-game series. You have to make hay in these, I believe it's 22, 21 games that you have against bad opponents, Baltimore, Texas, Cleveland, Minnesota. You have to make hay against those. Because right now, against the good teams, you're bad. And I'll talk about that here in a second. But at least right now, you have to win those series. You have to win as many games as you can against those bad teams, or else your season is going down the toilet. And you're right now you're hanging on a life raft right now. You're hanging on that lifesaver and hoping somebody comes by and rescues you, and that you get back onto dry land here. But it's really, really, really imperative that you take series against these bad teams, because it has been god awful, 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 and it's so frustrating to watch. Because once you get to playing good teams like this series against the Yankees over these last couple of days, they had that doubleheader. And I already mentioned what happened earlier on in the show. Why the hell are you not letting Tanner Houck go into the fifth inning? And I know some people will point to that Houck, the third time around, that the batting average is 625 in that third time around, and the OPS is like 1600 the third time around. But man, he was your best pitcher yesterday. He and Evaldi, but that was the second game. He was your best pitcher in that first game. And yeah, you want to play the numbers, but still, at some point you have to take the training wheels off with Houck. He's a starting pitcher, and he's a damn good one too. And then also on top of that, in his short career, he's dominated New York. He only gave up 2 runs yesterday. I think even though you went to Whitlock, and I trust Whitlock, he's one of the best relievers, it still is. It's still, you should be able to get 5 innings. And I know it's a 7-inning game, and you kind of have to play it a little bit differently, but still, if he's been your best pitcher out there and he's only given up those 2 runs, I would allow him to at least get into the 5th inning. I'm not saying go 6 and go all 7, but at least get me into that 5th inning and give him a really short leash. If he walks a guy, pull him. If he gives up a double, pull him. But the way the bullpen has gone, and I know we'll talk about Whitlock here in a second, but the way the bullpen has gone, outside of Whitlock and maybe even Barnes, but he's still kind of a little bit of a enigma at this point. The way it's gone, I stick with that starting rotation. Sink or swim with the rotation. And as it's gone right now, man, things just aren't looking good. And you had an opportunity yesterday, but that was just a perplexing part. And the biggest issue, though, we've just kind of danced around it here in the beginning of the show, but just dive right in here, has just been the bullpen. The bullpen, which was an absolute strength of this team, has been awful since the trade deadline. They just have not been. Your confidence level in that bullpen has gone from sky high to pretty much rock bottom at this point. I mean, you can't get much worse than what they're doing right here. You're pretty much seeing what was happening to the Yankees when they were bad about a month ago, when their bullpen was just blowing leads every which way, finding new ways to embarrass themselves every night. So you're pretty much in that same boat that they were, because you're not getting any good production out of that bullpen since the trade deadline. You have guys like Matt Barnes blowing saves, and then Adam Ottavino has not looked sharp. And then Josh Taylor, who Alex Cora called one of the best lefties in all of baseball, which for a while he was on a roll. There was nothing, you couldn't argue with Cora on that one. For a while, he was one of the best lefties in the game. And then he's just, all the magic has just kind of been brushed away from Taylor, at least over this 3-week stretch. And then even Garrett Whitlock, who is probably the reliever that I trusted the most outside of probably Barnes until he started to go down the tubes here. Garrett Whitlock in his last couple of appearances really has not come out to perform. He had that bad outing against Tampa Bay where he gave up 2 runs and it was tied at four apiece. They lost that game. And then yesterday, they were up 3-2 in the 5th inning when he comes in and he gives up 2 walks and he just looked like he was crapping down his leg. It looked like the pressure got to him in New York. Now, I don't think it's just New York. I just think that the way things have been going, that they've lost all these games and where they are in the standings, and with Cora in all of Red Sox fans kind of looking at him as the savior of that bullpen right now, and them just needing to get a win. I think that's where it's getting to some of these guys, and that's where it kind of got to Whitlock. Because early in the year against the Yankees, he was nails. He was really good against the Yankees. So I don't think it's just facing the Yankees alone. I think it's this whole stew of everything it's been a pressure cooker for a lot of these guys in the bullpen. And I'll get to a few other things here in a moment. But really, it's been a pressure cooker lately, and this bullpen is just imploded right now. You just can't trust them. So, and like I said, it's just so disappointing because the bullpen was something that you could trust. You could trust this bullpen 3 weeks ago. I would have told you, no, you don't need to get anything at the trade deadline. No, you don't need to. Now, I would kill to have a good reliever. Not that you don't have good relievers, but somebody right now that their confidence level isn't shot, that you could put into a high leverage situation and you don't feel like they're going to walk the house or give up a grand slam or they're just going to melt under the pressure. Now, there's 39 odd some games or 40 something odd games left to go in the season. So you still have a tiny amount of time to figure it out, but not much. And the way things are going, you're slipping out of a playoff spot. So you can't afford to just tinker with things. You have to figure it out now. You can't screw around longer. Like I said, you might have a week or two here to figure it out. But after that, once you get into September, you better have your shit figured out, or else this is not going to be good. It is not. It's going to be ugly for this team because honestly, the starting pitching has been good. The starting pitching, minus how Pivetta came out tonight, it's been good. I mean, you've gotten good starts out of Houck. Chris Sale in his return against the Baltimore Orioles looked good. No, he's not the old Chris Sale who is an absolute psycho out on the mound, throwing 98, 99, has a wipeout slider, which the slider still looked good. I mean, he's throwing 94, 95 with good command. But again, it's not the old Chris Sale that was a Cy Young contender, but it's just his first start since back from Tommy John. So he's still got a while to go. I'm not going to freak out. But at the same time, you're getting good starts from Sale. You're getting everybody because you shoved Richards and Perez out into the bullpen, so you don't have to worry about them anymore. Now, and like I said, the offense is starting to hit again, at least maybe against some of the crappier teams. We'll see how they go against some of these top-tier teams here. It's just hasn't been good against some of the top tier, but at least the offense feels like they might start to be coming out of it. They did play halfway decent against Toronto offensively. Again, it was bullpen that imploded on them and some of the starters, so that was disappointing. But right now, it's the bullpen that just has me so worried because if you have a lead, unless you have a 10-run lead, I don't feel comfortable. If it's not grand slam proof, I don't feel comfortable. To be honest, the way things have gone, I don't have any confidence right now in this bullpen. They need to get that. They need to buy my confidence back. It's just, right now, I don't feel great about any of this right now. And as things sit, they're, like I said, they're barely hanging on to that last wild card spot. And the way this game is going tonight, they're probably, if the score holds up at 4-1 as we head into the top of the fourth, they're going to be officially in third place in the wild card spot and officially third place in the division and out of a playoff spot. Now, obviously, you can make that up. You certainly can. Don't get me wrong. But it's not looking good. They were 10.5 games up on the Yankees. 10.5, 2.5 weeks ago. Back in July, back at the beginning of July, they had a 10.5 game lead against the Yankees. You thought the Yankees, I thought the Yankees were pretty much going to be finished at that point, or at least that they were going to have a hell of a time getting back into that playoff mix. But they've come storming right back. They're 14-2 or something ridiculous, or 16-7. It's whatever it is. It's been ridiculous the run that they're on, and they're God, and it sucks to see them doing that well after you crushed them early in the year. It's just been god awful. And getting back to that bullpen, because I have to go on a tangent there, just getting back to why I'm also worried about the bullpen is early in the year when you had to rely on a rotation where Erod was getting shelled on occasion, or even if he had a halfway decent start, he only went 4 2/3, maybe 5 1/3, or he had he had games where he wasn't doing well, so he wasn't pitching deep into his games. Only Eovaldi and Pivetta were going deep, so you had to rely. And then you have Richards and Perez, who most nights can't get out of the third or fourth inning. It's just awful. It's bad. They can't pitch deep into a game. To rely on them to do anything was just awful. So now you even though now you have Sale and you have Houck. I know we can debate how deep Houck can go, but the point being is now you don't have you had to rely on that bullpen to pick up the rope and pick up the slack early in the year, and it worked. It worked with that bullpen. That bullpen was nails. They were lights out. It looked like you had Mariano Rivera coming out for 6 of those 8 or 9 guys you had out in the pen. All right, maybe I'm being a little facetious, but you get the idea. They were nails. They were good. But the point being is that they were just they had a lockdown bullpen. You had a situation where you had all the confidence, but on the flip side, you kind of thought you might end up getting burned here just because they had so many innings they had to pitch early on in the year, but you were just hoping that these guys were veterans. It's not like outside of Whitlock, you're not relying on guys that haven't done it before. They've been there, done it. So you know you can lean on them for it, but they've just been so gassed. I think that's the other part of this whole situation is that you're into the part of the dog season, the dog days of summer, in the part of the season where it's tough to pick up those victories, and you're just seeing this bullpen is gassed. To be honest, that's the biggest problem is they pitched so many innings early in the year that right now they're bad. They're bad. And like I said, you need probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 starts where you have a starter go into the 6th, 7th inning. And right now, that's not happening. It's not. And it's not like now that Sale's back, you can just rely on him to go 7 innings. That's not who he is right now. Next year, sure. I think he'll be back to that point. But right now, that's not him until he gets that fully at 100% as far as back to being full-time Chris Sale. So right now you're pretty much relying on Pivetta and Eovaldi to get you into the 6th and the 7th inning to kind of give this bullpen a rest. Or you really need a couple 16-2 games, 20-8 games like you had against Tampa Bay. But other than that, things just aren't. Other than that, you're not getting deep into games. You're not giving this bullpen time to rest. And that's not good because this bullpen is overworked. They're well overworked. And that's my fear is that now that the rest of the team starting to look halfway decent, starting to look pretty good again, it's not that bullpen is really the linchpin because with the starters not going 5 to plus innings or only if they're getting it into 5 innings, that's 4 innings that you have to rely on that bullpen tonight. And they're all high stress. And to roll in with that, I saw this tweet earlier that showed And credit to Lou Merloni, who put this tweet out from Red Sox Stats. So giving both of those guys credit, Red Sox Stats and Lou Merloni. The high leverage situations for the bullpen, and actually there's the hitters that are out there too, so you can talk about that in a second. But the pitchers are just having a god-awful time in 7 high leverage 7 1/3 high leverage innings in the month of August. This team is allowing a 321 average, a whip of 2.05, which not good. And they're allowing 2.5 home runs per 9 innings. And you're only striking out 25. You're striking out 25%, so it's still at a decent clip. That's kind of where that's been. But they're giving up 17 walks. That's the big one right there. The 17 walks in the 321 batting average in high leverage situations in the home runs. Not good. In clutch situations, this team is just spitting the bit. They're just not performing well. And honestly, if you want to look at that hitter stat as well, that's out there. In 43 plate appearances, and again, these are all high leverage situations, so runners in scoring position. In later in the game when the game's on the line, the average is 195. They're striking out at a 35% clip. They're only getting 5 walks. Their on-base percentage is 233. As opposed to if you go back into June, their on-base percentage in high leverage situations was 433. They're batting 319. Their base on balls plus K was 1.40. So you're getting more walks than strikeouts. And right now it's 0.10. So that's not good at all, because obviously your balls to strikeout ratio is vastly, instead of being vastly on the good side like it was in June, is vastly on the poor side. And their OPS is 423. So that's on base plus slugging. So basically you're not getting on base, you're not slugging. So even though I gave them credit for their offense starting to turn the corner, it's really the offense hasn't completely turned it fully because you haven't hit well in clutch situations, basically. So what this all boils down to is basically this team plays well against the bad teams over the stretch, but has played god-awful against the good teams. They're not hitting, they're not pitching out of the bullpen in clutch situations over this 3-week stretch against Tampa, Toronto, and New York. So it's really, really gone down the tubes. Really gone down the tubes against good teams. So will they get out of this? Can they? I think by virtue of having all these games against bad teams coming up, they have a 9-game stretch against bad teams. Against some bad teams coming up here in Cleveland, Texas. So you really have to make your hay against those teams right there. And I think they'll be able to score runs. They'll pitch well enough with the starters. And since they're facing some not so good teams, that bullpen, I think, will be able to eke those games out. Hopefully. It's just once you have to face Tampa again after this 9-game stretch of facing some subpar teams, you have to face them for a 4-game stretch down in Tampa. That's always tough. And then you have to face the Chicago White Sox coming up in September, and then another series against New York. It just has not gone well. Not gone well, but I think just by virtue of having, and you still have some games against Baltimore, so just by virtue of having enough games against bad teams, I think you'll probably get into that low 90s win. You'll be right there with New York and right there with Oakland. So I think they're going to snatch one of those wild card spots, but I'm just really worried about how well they're playing against these teams that are over 500. Any of these teams that are in the mix for the playoffs, That's where they're imploding. And again, right now, their main culprit has been the bullpen and their lack of ability to perform in the clutch. Like I said, it's going to be a tough stretch here. I mean, not a tough stretch against the teams they're playing, but it's just going to be a tough stretch of trying to correct all these things and figure everything out before you have to play Tampa. Because I'm just right now, I'm just chalking this Yankees series up, pushing this one aside, and even as frustrating as it's been, you just have to clear the deck here. And I know I don't like to hear that as well. I'm not the one that likes to sit here and say that no, just turn the page, and hear the excuses. No, but just by virtue of the number of games, that's where, and the number that you have against bad teams, that's what turns around. If you had a 30 some odd game stretch, if let's just say that all these games against the division, instead of being in August, were in September, I would say they have no shot. But just because it's just from what the doctor ordered is facing these bad teams in September, the amount of them, that's where I feel a little bit better. That's where I feel that they'll be able to make some hay and be able to get back into the playoff race. I think like I said, if they were playing this late July, August stretch, they would have been screwed, royally screwed, and they would not have made the playoffs. But I just think they'll figure things out here in September, just to the point where they'll get a wild card spot. So I'll really cross my fingers, and I'm holding on by the hair of my chinny chin because it's bad, really bad. And it's the fourth inning in New York, and Andrew Heaney has so far shut down the Red Sox, basically, other than a home run by Bogaerts. It's still 4-1. Pathetic. But maybe we'll get to some happier news here with the Patriots, which ironic because they missed the playoffs last year, went 7-9, and we had to watch the disaster that was Cam Newton out there, literally fumble some games away. But maybe things are looking up. They loaded up in the offseason, at least defensively, and loaded up the tight end room. Wide receivers, we can argue, because I really don't think they loaded up the wide receiver core. They just brought in actual NFL receivers and not Scrabinis. But tight ends are really good. Defense, I think, is going to be really good. But the big story last week was Mac Jones. Mac Jones, as we all know, was the number one pick for the Patriots in the first round, the 15th overall. And the way things have been going in camp, everything looked like he was progressing really well. He was learning the system. He appeared to be smart, making the right reads. And obviously, he's going to be a rookie, so he's going to make those mistakes. So he ended up making his preseason debut against Washington football team. And I had a men's league baseball game on last Thursday night, and actually I will again tomorrow, so I'm not going to get to Oh, boy. My apologies. Had the hiccups there. Not fun. So, anyways, as far as Mac Jones goes, like I said, I didn't get to see him last week, and again this week with another men's league game, I'm not going to be able to see it fully. I'll get to watch a little bit of it on my phone, but in the bits and pieces that I saw, and then I did end up going back and watching it on NFL Network because right now they have no other. Well, obviously they have training camp content on all that, but right now that's their big content is replaying some of those games. So I was able to catch that game over again, and I liked what I saw to Mac. Wasn't perfect, but he was in there. He went in, had a good tempo. And I don't mean by tempo, I don't mean actual hurry up offense. That's more the speed. But as far as the tempo of the offense, what I mean is that he was in there. He didn't look lost. He didn't look like a deer in the headlights, and he wasn't out there looking all panicked. He went out there, led the offense like a professional quarterback, and he looked like an actual Patriots quarterback where he's out there making those right reads. And I know some people will want to pick on him for the check downs or some of the short passes, but it's like, where the hell have you been for the last 20 years? Even when Tom Brady was here, that was the offense they ran. And that offense, won you 6 Super Bowls. I know they had Tom Brady, so calm down, people. Calm down. I'm not saying he's Tom Brady, but my point is that this is what the Patriots offense is. It's not an offense that's Bruce Arians, where you're out there chucking it deep the whole time, although obviously we know Brady kind of took over that system and modified everything, and it's kind of Patriots West-ish with a little bit more deep passes. But the point being, it's not just a air it out offense like Bruce Arians, because that's the best example. But you don't. But it's you don't have those weapons either, so it's not like you have the ability to do that. But even when Belichick has those type of weapons, he uses them in spots. He doesn't do it the whole game. So he doesn't treat it like Madden and see, I have a guy and send a guy on a fly route every time. No, it's professional football, so you have to play it a little bit differently. So the point being here with Mac is that he went out there, executed the system that they had, and on the few deep attempts, I think he looked halfway decent. The one that he had to Christian Wilkinson, he put that right in the bucket. It's just that you're throwing to a practice squad end of the depth chart receiver that probably is not going to make this team. So, and it's probably going to be on the practice squad if at all. So you're not exactly throwing that down the field to Randy Moss and he's going to catch that and go in for an easy score like it should have been. But he put that right on the point. Now the one to Gunnar Olszewski, that was the one that was kind of that one was a little bit on Mac, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't egregious. It wasn't a Cam Newton deep throw where it's 15 yards shy, 10 yards shy. Of course not. Now, am I going to sit here and say that Cam's been horrible in the preseason? No. From all reports, he's been up and down, but lately he's been okay. And in the joint practices here against Philly this week, he's had his moments, and so hasn't Mac. Cam and Cam has had a few, and he did have the bad end of the practice against Philly, but it wasn't to the point where he screwed up so bad that he's going to lose the job right away. And Mac in that same boat, he had an okay practice on Monday, and then all reports on Tuesday. All these both of the quarterbacks basically completed. They were, I believe, Cam was 11 for 13, and then Mac was like 12 for 13, or they were both really in that similar boat of not missing a lot of guys in check downs. I guess with Mac, the difference was a lot of his missed throws would hit the turf, whereas Cam's would just find the hands of some of the opposing Eagles on the other side, and they would intercept them. So that would be the difference, where he'd overthrow. So Mac was a little bit more cautious, was not as error repeating as Cam was, to put it that way. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Mac has it head and shoulders, but I'm still standing firm that Mac is going to be this opening day quarterback on day one. And I know some people want to push back and will want to say that Cam is still going to be the starter. What has Cam done to lose the job? I don't think it's as much as what Cam has done to lose the job. It's more of what Mac has proven to this team to show that even as a rookie, I can come in, I can run the system the way that you want it to be run, meaning in the way that Belichick and McDaniels want it to be run. But there really hasn't been anything that I've seen in the little bit of game action or the reports that I've read that suggest that Mac doesn't have the ability to do it. Everything shows that he does, that he's smart. He makes the right reads. He's out there making the right check downs. Yeah, he's going to make some mistakes. He's a rookie. And even the wily veterans make those mistakes. Hell, Tom Brady makes those mistakes. So the point being here is that I think you're in a position where Mac is going to be able to give you enough to operate that offense. And this offense is built for a guy like Mac with those tight ends. Now, hopefully those tight ends are healthy, because obviously Hunter Henry is out with the shoulder, and earlier in the practices, Jonnu Smith was banged up with the ankle, but both of, especially the Jonnu Smith one, that one was not serious at all. That one doesn't seem like he's going to miss as much time. Hunter Henry, all reports are he's going to be ready to go for week 1. So they should have both of those tight ends back. To that part, I'm not as worried when it comes to those two. But still, it's a little concerning that your two best offseason targets, your two top-tier free agents right now are a little banged up. And even your third stringer, Matt McCaw, maybe third, maybe fourth, depending on what you want to think of Ossie. But right now, it's Devin Ossie is the only really healthy tight end you have left, other than some practice squad bodies. Because Matt Lacoste is out injured. These tight ends dropping like flies. So we'll see how it goes. Like I said, it sounds like it's not going to be as serious for Smith and Henry. So you should have those two back for week 1. And even if Jonnu Smith is ready to go, say next week for the last preseason game, I don't think he's going to get a lot of playing. I don't think he'll play just because Belichick's going to conserve him for the regular season. He's done that with a lot of veterans that have been dealing with some injuries over the years. So I'm not really going to sit here and really worry about that. But the point being here is that Mac has the opportunity to play with some good players out there that are more or less molded for a situation for him to come in and succeed from day one, where you're just asking him to make those intermediate, the short throws to the tight ends, to guys like Jacoby Myers, and every now and then you hit a deep shot down the field to not Hunter Renfrow. I was thinking about the other Vegas Raiders receiver, but Nelson Aguilar, who's going to be your deep threat, maybe a little bit of Bourne, but he's not as fast. So you don't have a ton of deep threats out there. So this is really more built for a guy like Mac Jones, who can come in and kind of be more of a surgical quarterback. And who knows, maybe you pick up a wide receiver depending on how the season goes. And then obviously you have Damian Harris and Sony Michel in the backfield. And Damian Harris, from all things considered, I think is pretty much going to be the lead bell cow, because just the way that Belichick has talked about in this offseason, I don't think we're going to see as much of a committee approach as we've seen in the past. I'm not talking about pass catchers, because I think on third downs, you're still going to see a lot of James White. But I'm just talking about on the early downs, I think it's going to be a lot of Damian Harris. I think he's going to have a big breakout year, have 1,300 plus yards rushing, probably throwing about 200 yards receiving, and total touchdowns, I'd probably say 13 total touchdowns. I think he gets 1 to 2 passing touchdowns, and then 10 to 11 rushing touchdowns. Because I don't think you're going to see as much Cam this year, because like I said, you're going to see Mac. So that's where he comes in and gets a lot of those touchdowns. Because I really like what I've seen out of him. So, and then you have a good backup in Sony Michel. Now, obviously, he's disappointing because you picked him in the first round. You thought you were going to get a lot more out of Sony. And don't get me wrong, I've been there. I've been disappointed. I've been bitten by the Sony Michel bug before and gotten burned on that. But if he's your second running back, that's a good second running back to have, because he's still, as much as we give him a lot of crap, he has been at least productive in the league. So if he's your number 2 to Damian Harris, I like that. And then on top of that, you have Ramondre Stevens, who popped in game 1. Now, obviously, chunk of that came from the 91-yard touchdown run, but still, I saw things to like from Ramondre Stevens. I don't think he's going to crack the top 2 there and get any significant playing time, but I think you're going to have between Damian Harris, Sony Michel, James White, Brandon Bolden, who's a core special teamer at this point, along with Matthew Slater. Those are going to be your 4. And I think because you probably would have Ramondre Stevens plucked off the practice squad, you're going to keep him. So you're going to have 5 running backs. So I think that's where you're going to probably see a lighter wide receiver core possibly at this point, and you're going to load up on more running backs. But basically, this offense is built for Mac Jones. And at this point, I think Mac Jones is going to get the week 1 start. I really do. I'm going to stand firm on that. And I really don't see where Mac has really done anything to disprove that whole theory. He's held up his end of the bargain. And yeah, I know Cam has been decent throughout camp, and he hasn't really done anything to lose the job per se, but just based on what the Patriots want to do, how they want to be more quick in the rhythm, and be more surgical with that offense and not have to stand back there for 3-4 seconds back in the pocket and have those shot put style throws with Cam. I just think he's more of what you need. And I think he is ready. I honestly do. And I know some people will want to point, well, maybe you give him till week 4. Maybe you give him till week 5. But I think at this point, I think he's got enough. I think he's got enough to lead this team. Now, if Belichick does go with Cam as the starter, let's just say that I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm not. But if I'm wrong and Cam is named the starter in week 1, I don't think it's going to be for long. I think the hook is going to be really short on Cam. And I'm talking like week 1, week 2, maybe week 3. I don't think this is going to go long with Cam. I know some people want to throw out the theory that, they don't want to overload Mac with that week 4 game against Tom. And I don't think Belichick thinks that way. I think if he was confident with somebody, I think he's going to believe in him. And I think he would believe in him enough that he can go up and play against the GOAT. But if Belichick does think that Cam is the starter, at least to begin the year, at least early on, I just don't think Belichick, he's smart enough to at least have a short hook on him. So if you have a really bad week 1 and you have a bad week 2, or you're just not seeing this offense is just stagnant, because you have to remember, this was a quote from Belichick. Cam, like I said, this is a direct quote from Belichick. Cam has been the same since last training camp, since last preseason, since last regular season, early on in September, late in the season, all the way through this year. Those are words from Belichick. I'm not making this up. So basically, what Belichick, to paraphrase him in this whole standpoint, is that Belichick is basically saying that Cam might know the system better. He might have studied. He might know things to the point where he could go out there and diagnose what's happening and be able to run the Patriots offense from a mental standpoint. But from a physical standpoint, I just don't think it's there. Physically, things just aren't going to be able to click for him right away. He's out there with full body throws. He looks so stiff out there trying to throw the football. It's like trying to throw a shot put when it's kind of up there, and it ends up flinging towards the ground or overthrown or getting intercepted. It just does not look pretty at all when it comes to Cam. So I just don't think that he has enough left in the tank, but maybe Belichick gives him the benefit of the doubt here. Maybe we'll see tomorrow night who gets more reps. Supposedly it's going to be Cam, but I wouldn't hold your breath just because Belichick's been known to kind of pull some last minute moves here. And this is a true quarterback competition. I know some people don't want to think that, but I really think Mac has shown enough where he can take over this offense. And another thing for the Patriots to kind of be concerned about here is that we're into week 2 of the preseason, and we're kind of getting down to that nitty-gritty point. We only have one preseason game left, and I know this year you have two weeks until the regular season, but you're getting down towards where you have to cut the roster. And I'm not saying, obviously, Stephon Gilmore, if he signs a contract, he's going to be your number 1 corner. He's going to make the roster no matter what, as long as he signs his deal. But from what I'm getting at here is that with Stephon, is that he has not signed his deal yet. So I'm not slamming that panic button now, but I'd like to see them work something out, because you need to have Stephon on this team. He means too much to this defense. You put way too much money and way too much effort into rebuilding this roster to just give up and not have your number one corner, because I just don't think J.C. Jackson is a true legit number one. He's a really good number two. He's the top tier probably of that number two corner market. But Stephon Gilmore still, even if he slipped a little bit, is still a top 5, at worst top 10 corner in the league. So you need him back. You need him to shut down that other side of the field, or at least to go over there and attempt to, and see what you got left in Stephon. And with this defense that's around him, he's the linchpin to this defense. Even as many pieces you brought in with Judon and go through down the whole list and having Hightower back, he still is the number one piece to that puzzle defensively. So we'll see how that goes, but it's just kind of interesting to see that Stephon has not signed that contract. Now, one of the other interesting things that happened recently is that Marcus Smart signed a 4-year, $77 million deal with the Boston Celtics. Now, this deal, I'm not a huge fan of, from the standpoint of if you're just looking at bringing Marcus Smart back and paying him this much money. I am of the standpoint that I like Marcus Smart, and I say that very lightly, not because I don't, obviously as a person, I have nothing against Marcus as a person. Where my hesitation comes in is that Marcus Smart is a defensive specialist, basically. That's what it boils down to. Marcus is you bring him in there to play defense. He's a good defender. He goes in there and he's a low level, not low level, but he's a mid-level point guard in this league. He's a guy that would be a good sixth man on the roster. But just to rely on him, to pay him big money, to quote unquote have him as one of your cogs. And I know that Ime Udoka does like him from his time coaching him with Team USA back in the 2019 World Cup tournament. But there's just something about Marcus Smart that sometimes I think he grinds that locker room the wrong way. He just that attitude sometimes can wear on guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, at least from the reports. So I just don't see his value at this point. Why you had to go and pay him that much. Now, obviously, I think what the long-term plan is here, that you have him for this year. Obviously, you have him for 4 years, technically. But I think you have him for this 1 year. Then you end up, I think, next offseason, you find a trade package that you can send him away, maybe out to D.C. to get Bradley Beal. Now, obviously, you're going to have to give up more to get – well, Bradley Beal's a free agent. My apologies. But my point is that you use him as a trade chip in a part of a trade where obviously the NBA, you do have to make the salaries work. You can't just play fantasy GM like you do on Name Your Game, MLB The Show, or Madden, or NBA 2K. But the point here is that you can't just play fantasy GM. You do have to make the salaries match. But I do think that you end up using this as a trade chip so that you can bring back somebody that has a similar salary, because that's a $19 million a year. So you can get a halfway decent player if you end up going out there and you get a Bradley Beal to pair with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Then maybe you can bring back another piece to add to this puzzle for the Celtics. So I think that's, like I said, I think this is more of a long play when it comes to that contract. Now, if this isn't any long play and he ends up being here for all the 4 years and they don't use him as a trade chip, it'll be interesting to see how Ime Udoka uses him in this new iteration. Well, I say new iteration, but it's really Dennis Schroeder and a few other players that were brought in are really all that's changed. You haven't really shaken up the roster, but in this newest iteration of the Boston Celtics, we'll see how this goes. But it's just I just don't see how this is going to work long term and really get you to the next level where you want to go, because this Celtics team is in a precarious situation because you have two young stars that you can build around, but outside of that, there's not a lot of complementary pieces that are there. You don't even have that other third piece to go with them. So that's why you're hoping that next offseason that Tatum and Beal can play together and you don't have to trade away Jaylen Brown, and then you can have those three play. And then that's where you have a big three. And then that's where you can start to bring complementary pieces in. So I just think that this Marcus Smart deal, I think, is more of a long-term play for the Celtics. Now, like I said, I wasn't all pumped and jacked that they brought back Marcus Smart. It was more of like a, okay, type of move. You shrug your shoulders and move on with your day. You're not dreaming of an NBA championship when you do that. And speaking of champions, for the little things segment, we'll go to Tom Brady. Now, Tom Brady, as you all know, is on Madden 2022. This is his second appearance on the Madden cover, first since 2018 when he was obviously still with the Patriots, first appearance on the game as a Buck. And then they did that whole GOAT thing. That's not my bone of contention today. Today, my little gripe that I have here with Brady, or not gripe, it's just one of those, like I said, it's a little thing that kind of made your ears perk up. So in the commercial that he has for Madden 2022, he's doing the whole kind of 80s, early 90s sitcom kind of vibe to it. It was kind of cool. And you see him talking to guys on his phone. Well, supposedly talking to guys on his phone. And you see like, oh, Jules is coming up for Edelman. And then he calls like Will and Guinness, Teddy Bruschi, and all these guys. And of course, like midway through the segment, through the commercial, he ends up calling Mike Vrabel, the coach of the Tennessee Titans, and obviously Patriots fans know him from his days in New England as the Swiss Army knife at linebacker, outside linebacker, defensive end, even a tight end at times. But in the commercial, you hear him go to try to recruit Vrabel back, and he tells him that coaching is overrated. Now, if you're kind of petty and vindictive, maybe you might be thinking, oh, maybe that's a shot at Bill Belichick. The sound-minded person would probably say, oh, yeah, that's just Brady saying, oh, I went down to Tampa last year. I had Bruce Arians as my head coach. I ended up winning the Super Bowl because I had a loaded roster. Maybe that's as mundane as that. But, of course, with the mudslinging, that's the perceived mudslinging, maybe not actual. Who knows how those two feel about each other, but you kind of have to think that between Belichick and Brady, the competitive juices and bloods are flowing, and neither one of them wants to see each other win because they want to get the glory. Or at least probably they wanted to get the glory together, but then things kind of went south and got sour. But it's just interesting. Now, do I seriously think it was a dig at Belichick? No, but there's a little part of me that thinks maybe a little bit of it was kind of a dig and saying, oh, okay, Bill, yeah, maybe it's not as important. I went down to Tampa and Bruce Arians was my head coach, and I just had a great second half and I had a great Super Bowl and blew out the Kansas City Chiefs. And oh yeah, I had all these weapons down there too. Would have been nice to have those in New England now, wouldn't it? So it was something that caught my attention because it was really the only line the extra line that Brady used, because for Edelman, for Ocho Cinco, for Willie McGinnis, Randy Moss, I think, Randy, he might have used one thing, but there were really only two guys that he used. And it was interesting that Vrabel, he drops coaching's overrated. So there might have been a little bit of a slight dig into Belichick there. And my callous heart might kind of like that a little bit, if it was true. Not saying it was that he was digging at Belichick, but you can kind of dream and you can kind of have a little fun with it. But that was the little thing for this week. Now, as we move into next week, we'll keep the life monitor, that heart monitor on the Red Sox, basically to see if they still have a heartbeat. And hopefully they still do with all those crappy teams they have to play. They should still be in the mix here. But we'll keep an eye on the Red Sox and see if they can right the ship here and stay afloat in the playoff race. And, of course, we'll break down preseason game number 2 for the New England Patriots. And anything else that comes up in the New England sports area, we will certainly keep you abreast of that. And just keep a lookout on Twitter, either at my personal account, at Sean_Met28, as you can see right there on the screen if you're on the live stream, or if you're on Twitter, it's the same there, Sean_Met28, or hit me up on Facebook, Sean Metcalf, or with the show account at NE Sports Weekly as well, or on my Instagram account. And then remember to hit the podcast up if you weren't able to make it here tonight, or if you know somebody that wasn't, just let them know that it is available on Spotify or SoundCloud under NE Sports, New England Sports Weekly. So it's all available there. And we'll keep you abreast of maybe some show changes here, trying to work on getting a few guests here on the show to do a special NFL season preview. So let you know if that. But for right now, you have a good evening, good rest of your week. And I've been Sean Metcalf for New England Sports Weekly.